Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is Nourished as Fuck at Christmas time. So the reason that we really went there with that title is because we really want you to be able to set an intention that allows you to co-create and in some ways manifest the exact experience you're wanting to create for your little family unit that may be different to what you grew up with, or maybe something you've not experienced in your own past but are seeking to forge a pathway forward for your lineage from your children onwards. So we're going to be talking today about what that looks like to set an intention, what that looks like to chuck out the garbage that's in the way, and how we might really nestle into feeling nourished by the festive season and the time that we have with our families rather than rushed by it. So before we do that, I would really love to share with you our podcast sponsor for this week. And Hannah from Arc and Luna is sponsoring this podcast because she's also part of our Kids Kindness Advent. So we're doing a workshop with her in the Kids Kindness Advent on Wednesday. And she's going to be walking us through some really beautiful open-ended play experiences that end in flower-pressed wrapping paper that we make out of cloth. So she just has the most profound online business. It's gorgeous. Bridgie Knight has found
her store. Oh my
goodness. I know.
I want it all.
I know. Well, I just about bought it all because it's so gorgeous. So you can find out more about Arc and Luna at Arc, A-R-K, and Luna, Luna.com.au. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Hannah so it gives you some depth into why we love what she does in her world and with her own children, and is then expanding that out to the children in Kids Kindness Advent and with ourselves. So Hannah is mama to Arc and Luna and the curator of the little store, arcandluna.com.au. She has an educational background in developmental psychology and has worked extensively as a children's and family counsellor specialising in play therapy and mindfulness-based approaches. Hannah wanted to merge these two worlds and empower parents to facilitate this play at home and find a way for play therapy to be gifted to children every day, so they too can be in touch with how they feel, with who they are, and be empowered with skills to communicate and regulate. You can see why we love her already. Each product has been carefully selected to foster deep imaginative play or encourage mindfulness so you too can observe your children's emotional well-being flourish. Here you will find ethically made toys and resources that inspire nature and imaginative play that connects you and your family to this earth of ours. Sustainability is important, striving to source the most eco-friendly solution. All of the wooden products are manufactured using sustainable timber sources, and any paints or sealants are non-toxic. So please, if you're after something really gorgeous for your kids for Christmas, I've bought all sorts of wooden, play pegs for making cubby houses, and she has these incredible like fine motor tongs and funnels for all types of different play and sorting boxes. So please go and have a look at arcandluna.com.au, and a huge thank you to Hannah for joining us in celebrating the Kids Kindness Advent, and we very much look forward to making some sustainable wrapping paper by flower pressing real flowers with our children, which is exciting.
My 4-year-old's particularly excited about this one, so it's going to be great. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, and then I was looking up Japanese folding on how you fold a present. It's a particular, I couldn't even remotely tell you the name, but I was looking at it on Pinterest. You know, I'm a Pinterest addict. I was looking at it on Pinterest and I was like, oh, that's how I'm tying our Christmas presents with our flower wrapping paper. But if you'd love to join us, you can, certainly for our Kids Kindness Advent. It's only $22, and we walk you through the whole 4 weeks, and we give you a community that helps you inspire what it is to really set the tone for a Kids Kindness Advent with random acts of kindness and connection throughout your lead into Christmas. So you can find out more on our socials, Nourishing the Mother and nourishingthemother.com.au. So how about we get into this, Bridgie?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we really focus on with our Kids Kindness Advent is that we really want to have a intention that becomes what we manifest. So we want to have a guiding light that's always going to be pulling us forwards, that we measure our choices almost against ways. Does it align with this desire that I have, or this intention that we're setting as a family, or is it a little bit left of that, in which case I'm not going to choose it in this moment? So when you think about what your intentions are for Christmas and for the festive season, what are they for you and your family, Bridget?
Yeah, so I just love this because it really does provide such a beautiful anchor at a time when it's really easy to be consumed by the outer world and consumed by the overwhelm. So I gave it some thought, and for me, I've settled on sort of 3 key intentions or values, I suppose, that I really want to hold, and those are connection, enchantment, and gratitude. And that I really want to keep coming back to those things throughout this season and run everything by those as a path through the sometimes chaotic, period that it is, right? And also run my own triggers through that, as well as an effort to break patterns as well, because this is a time of intense, for many people, intense, deeply wired habitual ways of being in relationship that come up and are offered to us as an opportunity to shift and change. And so when we have these intentions in place, we're more able to bring consciousness to those habitual patterns and create change through them. So we can be invited to open beyond our rigidity, or to tease out our maybe, sometimes there can be a Scrooge-ish element around Christmas, depending on the patterning that you've got. And if you're, in my case, my key value is connection, then that's a way to shake myself out of old beliefs or old ways of holding on to stuff that actually doesn't make a lot of sense, but that has become safe, right? But if actually what I'm really stretching myself into at this time of year is connection, then actually those two don't fit, because sometimes the Scrooge-like rigidity or holding on to something of how things need to be, or even like my husband gives me heaps because he reckons that I'm a bit of a Christmas Scrooge in the sense of not wanting to put lights on our house, because I have an aversion to like some of them that look really like awful.
I would never have taken Marcus for a lights man.
He really wanted lights. So anyway, we got lights.
I love him even a little bit more now.
Oh, so this is a big thing for him to like, that I've just finally kind of given into it all. I'm like, okay, Christmas me up. Like I'm stretching beyond, and I think
bring the spirit.
Yeah, you know, like I think it's part of it is that his dad, you know, has always had like the super like ugly, like over the top Christmas stuff, which just kind of like gets my hackles up. You know, so I've resisted a little bit of that like super kit kind of Christmas and put things that don't even need to be in that box, right? You know, kind of like
get it.
Like, you know, throw the baby out of the bathwater kind of thing. So I'm like, you know, I've let a lot of that creep back in, and I'm like softening all of those edges and all that.
How did that happen though? How did that happen that you're like, okay, I'm ready for lights? Like, how did that happen?
Well, actually, I think I'd said yes last year. I said, yeah, okay, like, it's fine. Like, I'm totally good with it. And that didn't happen last year. And then the kids were at Aldi with him, and they pointed them out, and he's like, yeah, let's get lights. And he just came home with them. Like, I started stringing them up the same day. So they're up now, and they're actually really beautiful. They're just like the icicle ones, you know, those.
Yeah.
But I digress. But that's an example of just like, you know, when you get to those points, you're like, why do I feel like this? Like this, I didn't even want this anymore. Like this just actually feels like something that was kind of not a big deal. Actually now feels like this heavy cloak that I don't want to wear anymore. So I was going to take it off.
Yeah, I love that. But how did you take it off?
I just let it go. I just was like, I just don't even not want I don't have a thing about it anymore. I think I just moved past it. I recognized that actually, particularly in terms of really experiencing the enchantment that I wanted to experience with my kids, that I could no longer hold on to that and at the same time experience the enchantment of Christmas. You know, they'd almost become like mutually exclusive. I couldn't have both. I couldn't have both my like Grinchy kind of aversion to anything that's a little bit like, you know, ugly-ish, and also have enchantment. I had to like soften that in order to open into.
So good.
You know, and we've also had like a number of years of visiting Christmas lights too, the like last couple of years, and like just the kids just absolutely love it. So for us to have.
Do you go up to Ivanhoe? Is that where you go?
No, in Bayside, Melbourne, there are amazing ones, like Beaumaris kind of area.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible, like incredible. So we've been there the last couple of years. So us having lights kind of is a bit of a reminder of that ritual that we've created to go visit them. So that's also part of what's been the access point of opening me up to it.
It's so good. I often think our family does that. As you were saying that, I was having a reminder because you're like my sister-in-law at this moment who's super styling, you know, amazing, you know, woman. And my husband's family always love beautiful designery things.
Yeah.
But I love me a bit of tinsel. So offensive to them.
That's my thing. I have the aversion to the tinsel.
I
used to have a visceral reaction to tinsel. Because it was everything that a stylish Christmas was.
Right. Whereas I just look at the tinsel and I'm like, oh, look, it's so pretty and it sparkles and it blows in the wind. It's just so fabulous. And it was a running joke because in Nick's super stoic, well put together family, I'm like a bit of a, you know, like, oh, I love too much and I'm too exuberant and I'm over the top and I love tinsel, and it's all like a bit too much for them. And so one year I had enough with my sister-in-law. I rocked up to her house with my car with tinsel on it, and she was absolutely horrified. She almost could not get over it. And then I was like, well, you just need to bring the spirit. Where's the spirit in this family anymore? We made this whole thing about it. Anyway, we were having Christmas at her house that year, and bless her cotton socks, whatever it was that I'd said or that I'd provoked over so many years long enough for her, it was she decided to let the cloak go in her own way.
Yeah. And
we walked up to Christmas Day and she'd bought like these artist-made like 3D Santas that were like 6 foot, but they were made out of like wire and all spray, and she had them all in her front yard. And then she lives in an apartment in the city. So you walk up a stairwell and she had the Santa hanging from the center of her stairwell from the roof. And then you get to run. Every step there was a new thing, to the point where she even opened the door to the toilet and she went, "There you go, Jules. You can even wipe your ass with some Christmas spirit." And she bought Christmas toilet paper. And I was like, this is fantastic. And
so good.
So good. And ever since that year, there's been a different spirit about it. Like, it doesn't, I've actually, it doesn't have to be tinsel. I let go of tinsel. I think now that it's relaxed there, it's like I didn't have to be so like, it's so funny, isn't it? Like dynamics. I'm like, yeah, whatever, spirit's here, and
I am.
And they just totally have, just a different way of celebrating, but it's loosened a little bit. So I sometimes wonder, how much does our family brush those edges too?
Yeah, totally. And them taking some of that from you has loosened you too.
Exactly.
Take up all that space because they've said, okay, all right, we'll join in.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's like this beautiful, almost like softening, isn't it? Melding in the middle with everybody, because now it's not mutually exclusive anymore, is it? It's that, what do they call that crossover section in that diagram? What do you call that?
Oh, the Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Oh, the concentric circles, is that?
Yeah, what do you call the middle bit?
The middle bit. I can't remember what the middle bit's called.
That's where we need Amelia.
Yeah. Definitely has a name.
Whatever that bit is. So let's bring it back. Intention setting for Christmas. Is there anything else that you want to share about that?
I think that the gratitude piece goes without saying in terms of our focus on kids' kindness, and that being a really key part of why you and I feel really strongly about doing the Kids Kindness Advent, because, ultimately for us, we were going to do this anyway, and that creating this has become our accountability.
Right.
To ensure that we show up with it and that it doesn't get away from us at a time when it so easily could, and at a time when everybody's busy and it's easy to kind of give the kids what they want because their demands can be heightened from the intensity of the season. But having gratitude there keeps us coming back to the spirit of giving, to the spirit of receiving, to the opportunity this time of year creates to have a pause and a reflection on the year, and to recognize our privilege that so many of us have to be able to gift in the way that we do, to be able to experience the time with our families that we do. And to have that as a value is to keep orienting the family and ourselves back to that, where it could easily be a time where you could be swept up in not enoughness, or swept up in this sense that your children are unappreciative maybe, and so therefore how do you come back into the embodiment of gratitude so that at the very least that's what we model, even if we might be struggling with our kids' natural nature to be egocentric. And how do we then come back into ourselves and ask ourselves what gratitude would feel like for us, so that at the very least our kids are bathing in that as a intention.
I love
that. That's really why I have that there too, because it's just a really beautiful time, I think, to pause and appreciate. Right.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
What have you got? What are your
Well, I definitely share connection with you. I would really you and I both have high values on connection, or else we wouldn't be, parenting the way that we do, I suppose, would we? So I also want to value connection at Christmas time, because I particularly think at this time it can get so busy that the doing takes over from any sense of being, and then you start to feel resentful about any being as a person.
Yeah, because
I can certainly find myself in that pattern. Yeah, you go.
I was even thinking tonight, like my kids wanting to read book after book, because I've got all the Christmas books out now, and it's that like tussle between how much I'd love to be with them and read, and then the doing of like, well, no, I've got a podcast to record, and then I've got to like get our Advent finalized, and like, that tussle, right? And so ultimately, yes, having connection as a core focus means, no, this is also important. Like, I've got to be over here in the doing and my head's over there, but also this here is the whole point of it.
Exactly. I loved what you said before about just having something that you orient towards. So beautiful, isn't it? It seems so simple, and yet really it's sophisticated, isn't it? It's just having a guiding light that you're continuously orienting towards, like a sailor. I just think it's...
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll kind of like track away from it a bit, like, and you'll go, oh, you know, a little bit like a sailor, like, you know, where's the lighthouse? Like, I can't see the lighthouse, and you know, how do I get back to that? And that's okay, but it's just having that to continue to move towards, even when we lose our way sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to. We had a last week's podcast sponsor was beeswax candles, and the name's just like
Happy
Flame. And so that's my day one tomorrow on our Advent, is that we're all inscribing our intentions for Christmas onto our candle, and then we're going to light it as the first day of Advent tomorrow. But I'm so grateful that we have these, that we've done this, right? Because you and I probably talked about doing the kindness Advent for like 5 years before we actually even did it.
Yeah.
And we were always like, oh, I wish I'd done that. Oh, it's such a great idea. Oh, I've run out of time.
And we kind of did like half-hearted versions of it, like ourselves, but then it was like, I think you said, let's just like do this thing as a community. And it was so great because it was like, yeah, okay, we're doing it, we're committing. And
as a community, it was way better. The energy just kept you there. People were sharing the most inspiring ideas. Just watching another mum in that group going, oh my gosh, just had this, you know, incredibly snuggly moment with my child, or this beautiful love bomb experience in the world. And I'm like, oh God, that's so beautiful. I want that too. You know, so it fuels you to keep going. That's what I love about community. I think it's far easier to do hard things in community and far harder to do them on your own. So thank you. I love that. And that for me is what connection is. It's just a reminder to slow down and be connected to humans, certainly to my kids, but also just to the neighbour in the street and the old woman down the road, and just that there's a slowness to that time that allows my body to, or my energy to mingle with someone else's for a short period of time is deeply meaningful to me. I want to be able to really feel people and that I've made a difference in my day, just in my day, just by having an interaction with a single person. And that, I love that. So I would love to know that kindness is spreading by virtue of me having the capacity to be calm and connected, at least at moments during my day, and not kind of running through a day and forgetting how important that is. I really love that. And I think really that, I mean, I kind of want to say I've got more than one, but I don't really, because they all kind of fit under connected when I think about that slowness, the connection with other humans, and laughter. I just want more lightness as we move into this. I think I'd said to you previously, Bridget, that for me, the lead into Christmas is often laden with a lot of heaviness. Like, I know this is what we're going to talk about obviously next, but in terms of when we're setting an intention for our families, often it's either because we ourselves have experienced it and we want to repattern that, or we want to just replicate it, or we're trying to pattern break an experience that we didn't enjoy or like for ourselves, in which case, when you're setting an intention to do that with your own family, probably the sludgy stuff of your own childhood's going to come up. And you're going to need to be with that in some way to transmute it or transform it, or to move beyond it, so that you're freed from the gravity of that, able to create something new with your own family. So for me, there's a certain amount of heaviness that comes with the lead in to Christmas that I know isn't me. I would love for you to share, because I know you said something to me the other night when we were talking about this, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but you were talking about the nuanced differentiation between something that's yours and you're really feeling something versus something that's not yours, but there's this almost vague heaviness that seems to descend upon you like a cloud. You know, that kind of...
Yeah, it's almost like you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's this sense of like, kind of you're shrouded in something, and you almost like kind of can't shake it, but it's not quite you, but it feels like it's weighing you down. Like there's a
yeah
to it. But I think because of that, like slight, like it's almost like an inner conflict where you're like, the true you is trying to say like, this is not you, but like there's a deep programming that says, yeah, but I'm coming with you anyway, you know, like and that's when you kind of know, oh, there's something to let go here. There's a pattern here that I am being asked to uncover and see more of. And, you know, I think it comes out when we are, you know, kind of quick to get irritated or quick to have a opinion about something but not really know a lot about it, or quick to have a judgment without a lot of context for why. You know, a little bit like, you know, we talked about my, like, aversion to like the tinsel. You're like, what even is that? Like, you know, it was like a, you know, what's with the visceral reaction? Like, how can I let that go? And you know, we talked when we were talking about this podcast and this topic, you know, I shared about like my husband and all of the stories that come with Christmas for him, with having split parents and, you know, having to not really feel like Christmas was about fun and about them, but about pleasing each parent and spending most of the day in the car, getting schlepped from here to there, and just the burden that felt like as a child, and the work that he's had to do to really bring the magic for our kids without the baggage that he has as a child.
Does he have a desire just to stay in one place because of that experience?
He has a desire for it to be easy. Like he has a desire for us to not have to like be everything to everybody else. He's very much like all about what works for us and not really getting too caught up in other people's expectations. I think because he had to meet like other people's expectations all the time. So even this Sunday, I can't get to his family Christmas thing because I've got another thing that I already had arranged with some school friends for months. And he's like, it's Christmas. Don't feel bad. Like it's just, this is what happens. It's a tricky time of year. And you know, he's very quick to like advocate for whatever works, you know, for you, because otherwise it can be consumed by everybody else. Like that's essentially his perspective. But at the same time, it comes from a place of also wanting to deeply nourish our family in that, not a kind of like Scroogey, you know, edge. It's, you know, obviously by virtue of the lights, like, you know, he's still really wanting to get into it and, you know, wanting to make it special for the kids and all of that.
You really notice a focus on it's okay to have your own, I'm going to say selfish, but self-centered needs at this point in time rather than meeting others.
Yeah, yeah. And
it's being boundaried, isn't it? I
think, yeah, it's quite boundaried. And also, he's like, you know, being conscious of what's best for the kids. Like, you know, I often think like, especially when kids are babies and little toddlers and this, you know, taking them 3 different places on Christmas Day, like it's just like, it's like so not for kids, right? Yeah. And so, you know, he's been quite supportive of my boundaries around that when each of our kids have been quite little, around what we will and won't do, you know, which has been helpful for me and for us in terms of, you know, nurturing our own like little family.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And what about your patterns that you notice that you need to work with?
Well, my patterns come from, look, they're a little bit muddied, I think, because from my father's side, I have this very, I really honestly don't know what the word is for it, but a lack of celebration, you know, that kind of, there's nothing to celebrate. Don't get too big for your boots. There's always people in poverty. There's people worse off than you. Who are you to be, do have, you know, any, so it's, I don't exactly know what the word is that describes that, but it's funny
that, I mean, because he was quite a spiritual person, but I mean, that to me also sounds like a religious dogma.
Yeah, totally. That's how it feels. It has that religious edge to it for me.
Yeah.
So whatever that is from his side, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily ever going to really know because he was my last connection to his side of the family, and I didn't grow up with grandparents. So I don't actually know anything outside of what I know about him, or, you know, the deeper knowing that comes from being someone's child. So there's kind of the heaviness of, we don't celebrate, we don't go to excess, we don't buy presents. You know, there's like that dampening on one side for me. And on the other side, I have this mum who grew up in extreme poverty in England and post-war. Sometimes such poverty, there wasn't enough money for food or enough money to keep all of the kids in the house. And her next sibling up would often be farmed out when it got too hard. Mum had MS, and so she never had a mum. And Dad was in the army. So she had a very different childhood. And again, a lot of poverty. And there's always been this huge sense of deprivation, and yet wanting so deeply for it. So she's found the deprivation in my father, right? It just comes in a more spiritually wrapped up package than you can't have that package. It, you know, probably mellows the message, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's dressed up, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So she's just found the same comfortable pattern in a lot of ways, I can see. And at the same time, confused and confusing emotions, wanting to celebrate, and then like the reins tightening. It's almost like it hits an edge, and the reins tightening. We can't afford it. We can't have anything. We're not allowed. But you know, like it's a really mixed, bipolar kind of emotional experience for me, the ride into Christmas. And I can remember nearly every Christmas was one of the most tumultuous emotional times for my mother. So as being her daughter, witnessing that. And I remember her being upset that we were here and she wasn't in England. And then when we were in England, her crying because we weren't back here. So it was never the thing that she said it was. It was just this pervasive discontent and
which was her, you know, wounding ultimately that she hadn't recognised.
Definitely. Like I think I said to you, I even remember one Christmas when we were in England and we didn't have money to buy any decorations or anything to put up our tree. We just moved there that year. And I remember as a kid being confused about that because we were sitting around making like paper snowflakes and literally threading popcorn on a string to put around our tree. And I remember having a sense of delight about that, but at the same time, so deeply confused because my mum she was crying and upset and disappointed that that was the experience that she was having in that moment. And so my long and the short of that for me is that it's a confusing time emotionally in my body, I can feel, as we lead into Christmas. So which is why it's been so important for me personally to recognize that and choose a different path forwards for myself and my children, and recognizing that when those old replays of like the cloak, like you said, when that cloak starts to descend and kind of fall on me again, then I go, hang on a minute, this isn't mine. And I'm okay to go back and love that little child who in me that was hurt and wounded back then, and to love my mum and her inner child for all of the ways that it was confusing emotionally for her. And I get to celebrate and move forwards with my own children. I can do all of that. But I think you've got to have awareness of when you're wearing the cloak that's not yours, because or else I think it gets quite toxic and confusing with your own children and relationship. Because as you and I both know, patterns that are already underlying at times of heightened emotional states will come to the surface in a more magnified way. So unless we're aware of the pattern that already exists, we'll tend to believe that things have just gotten worse, or this person's so blah, 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 or it means this about our relationship or child, as opposed to, oh, this is magnified because there's an increase in energy or intensity at this time. And so it was already there, just feels bigger, even though it's really just trying to point me in the direction. So it's a long-winded way of saying I recognize that as we set an intention, it can also require us to sit with a level of deep compassion for the parts of us that are wounded that don't match what we're seeking in the world, and that there's a process of healing potentially required that is, 1, normal, 2, hopefully to be expected, and 3, planned around. So instead of feeling like you're surprised by the elephant in the room when it arrives, that you're going, oh, that elephant's there. Here's how I can move with that. And it becomes a more harmonious experience for you and your family and your children. And I think that's deeply important for the experiences that we're all seeking to create with our own little families.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of highlighting that it is for all of the beauty and enchantment and wonder and connection that we want to create. It is also one of the most emotionally challenging times in many people's lives, because it amplifies all of the parts that feel broken, and all of the parts that feel unhealed, and all of the people that we feel might be missing, and all of our own stories that we haven't reconciled in ourselves. And so if that touches something for you listening, we really want to send much love and compassion to that place in you that perhaps feels like it needs some gentleness right now.
So what we really invite you to do is jump into our Kids Kindness Advent with us. It's a way to really slow down enough that you can let yourself be intentional about what you're creating for yourself and your children, and that's supported in a community that speaks the language you speak, that's seeking to have the experiences that you're seeking to have, and that we're connecting you with some businesses and people that are pretty incredible, doing really beautiful things in the world. And, when you look for beauty and you find beauty and you see beauty, it just becomes an expanded experience. So, and that's definitely what we want to be able to create with our own children. So I forgot to tell you at the start too, if you did love the wrap of Ark and Luna and you want to go check out her store, she has also very generously included a 15% discount code. So if you type in capitals, Nourishing the Mother, all one word, it will give you 15% off at her checkout. So please go and use that. Send some love to a mum who's trying to create something really intentional and beautiful this Christmas as well. Is there anything you would like to leave us with, Bridgie?
I would love to let everybody know or remind those listening that it is Julie's virtual book launch happening this week.
Thank you. I've actually forgot about to even say that. Yeah, thank you. I'm nervous. I'm actually nervous.
It's so good that you've moved through every emotion with this whole process. I've loved witnessing it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really excited for you.
Oh, thank you. I'm like feeling super grateful that you're going to be there with me at the virtual book launch. I feel like I've got a buffer.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
I'll be there holding your hand.
So you can absolutely join that. It's going to be on the, I was supposed to say the Pleasure Nutritionist, but I changed my handle. It's Love Julie Tenner on Facebook. So it will be on my Pleasure Nutritionist page, which is, the handle is Love Julie Tenner, at 8 p.m. on Friday, the 4th of December. And I would love to share that experience with you and certainly answer any questions that you have.
Beautiful. And to connect with you on your website, Julie, where's that?
Is julietenner.love, and to connect with you, Bridget.
It's suburbансandcastles.com. Remember to nourish them and to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcast.